about our mission and sort of training. And we'll build up until what we saw and sort of like lessons learned throughout the whole thing. There'll be some videos in there as well. It'll be kind of interesting. And I hope you enjoy it. But I'll tell you, like I said, I'll get you some parts that they're going to show you some casualty stuff, things we took care of in the desert when we were deployed. That, again, if you have a weak stomach, like, oh, this is really gross, I won't present it, but I'll tell you it's coming, okay? Because this is, I've presented this at multiple areas around the country, and everybody's sort of eye-opening, like, oh my God, right? But I do warn you guys ahead of time, all right? So hopefully you enjoy it. So to start off with, all right, 2003, it was March of 2003. Actually, before this, pretty much in the fall of 2002, there was a lot going on. A lot in the news. You guys were probably too young to be hearing all about this, but there was talk about Saddam Hussein. What is he doing over there? Does he have chemicals of mass destruction? Is he gassing his own people, or is he killing people? And there was a lot of talk about, do we have to go intervene? And some people said, hey, he doesn't have any of that stuff. And other people said, oh, he absolutely does. And some people said, well, this is George Bush's son trying to take over what his dad didn't finish in the first Gulf War. But there are people that really said, hey, no, we've got a lot of intel that says they have chemicals of mass destruction and they've been killing some of their people. They've been gassing their own people. That anybody that was against Saddam Hussein potentially could get gassed. The other things we found out when we were over there is actually Saddam Hussein in the bath party, if you crossed him, he would actually feed you to the lions and tigers at the Baghdad Zoo. And they literally would take these people and they would throw them into the pit, just like back in medieval times. Amazing. And these were people we met along the way and said, oh yeah, that happened. That was happening on a regular basis. So pretty crazy stuff. So we were getting sort of the heads up, being on active duty in the military, we're getting heads up that this is going to potentially happen, or maybe he'll posture down, he's just ruffling his feathers, but maybe he'll just go away, he'll stop this. He does this every now and then, he kind of ruffles his feathers, thinks he's a big shot, and then he comes back down. But this time he didn't, okay? Okay, so in February I was at a course in Texas, and as a military doctor, you're assigned to a hospital, stateside usually, right? Or in Germany or someplace else, but you're assigned to a hospital, and you're taking care of patients just like any other doctor in any other hospital. You take care of the active duty member, you take care of the family member, you take care of the kids, and sometimes there'll be retirees that you'll take care of as well. But when something comes up, some sort of a deployment comes up, people from all over the country in different hospitals come together and they join the team with what they call a PROFIS unit. So they're PROFIS to a different unit. And I was PROFIS to the 28th Combat Support Hospital. So even though I was in Washington, D.C., and the 28th Combat Support Hospital was out of Fort Bragg, people from all over the country basically gathered into Fort Bragg and said, okay, we're going to have to go someplace. All right, so we got the call that we're going to need to go over to Iraq. We didn't know if we were going to fly into Turkey, if we were going to go into Kuwait. All we knew was get to Fort Bragg, we're going to do some training, and likely fly over to Kuwait or Turkey to then go into Baghdad. Okay. All right. So what we did as a combat support hospital, you guys have heard of a MASH, right? They no longer call MASHs anymore, mobile support hospital. Now they call CASH, it's combat support hospital. And what we're supposed to do is set up this big field hospital, wherever, and casualties then get evacuated to the combat support hospital. We stabilize them, right? Stop the bleeding, basically wash out any dirty wounds, put bandages, put casts or splints on, usually splints. And then we get them out of there, usually within 2 to 3 days, and get them over to Germany or the United States to be further cared for. All right, so pretty amazing. The people on the battlefield, the survival rate for Iraq was 93%. Now, in other words, if you got injured on the battlefield, you had a 93% chance of survival. All right, if you lived the first hour, that golden hour. All right, but overall, what's amazing is that, these guys had pretty bad injuries, you'll see, and we were able to stabilize them at the ground. The medics took care of them on the ground, put them on a helicopter, and then brought them to the combat support hospital. And that's what we took over. I was in the emergency room. All right, geez, I keep doing that.
Oh, the bottom line goes Fisher.
Yeah, I figured it out now. I just went to med school for it. It's all good. All right. So my training, sort of what I did, I went to the University of New Hampshire. I did do Army ROTC and then got commissioned and went in the Army National Guard for a year waiting to go to med school. When I went to med school at the University of New England in Maine, And then I went to Albany Medical Center in New York to do my family medicine residency. But I really liked ER stuff too. So not only did I do my family medicine residency, but anytime I had a chance to do some trauma training, I would do extra training in trauma because I was really enjoyed it. I thought it was really exciting, get that little adrenaline rush, you know, with trauma and such. They'll come back to bite me later, I should find out, okay? These are all little courses, advanced cardiac life support, advanced trauma life support, other things. A couple of, this is medical management of nuclear and biological casualties. So we all get that training because there's always been a threat of nuclear and chemical, like that, biological warfare, right? So we had to get training on how you take care of casualties if they get, God forbid, they get gassed. Medical effects of ionizing radiation. What if there's a radiation attack? We had to know how to take care of casualties that got hit by some sort of radiation attack. So it's all part of military training to take care of casualties in this scenario. Okay. So these are just some other places. And 2 years prior to that, I actually deployed to Bosnia. And in 2001, Bosnia was kind of a hot spot. It was a combat zone. Had to wear flak vests, had to carry a weapon, loaded weapon, and as a doctor, you're like, what are you doing carrying a weapon and a flak vest? But that's what we did. That's what we did because it was a combat zone back then in Bosnia as well. So pre-deployment preparation. So we did a lot of this. Do all kinds of things. Sign this, get immunizations. They ask you a lot, like, who's your next of kin? Like, why do you keep asking who's my next of kin? Well, you know, if you die, we got to leave your life insurance and stuff. So, well, why do you keep asking that question? Yeah, you trying to tell me something? Am I gonna? Like, well, no, this is part of the routine. You just have to fill out all this paperwork. So we went through line after line after line, going through your medical records, make sure you're healthy enough to deploy, all this next of kin stuff, as we mentioned. Okay, we did get lots of vaccinations, a ton of different vaccinations. One of the real threats over there was anthrax, right? If you ever remember, but there was some mail that went through the mail system that had anthrax. And so one of the chemicals or biologic weapons that the bad guys out there in the world use is anthrax. And so we actually get immunized against anthrax and smallpox as well. These are training kits, but these are nerve antidote kits. So these are kits that we actually had the live ones, obviously, because if you ever got attacked by a gas, it was a nerve agent, basically it will paralyze you, you stop breathing, and literally you start to seize. And then you basically go flaccid and you stop breathing. And this will kill you, these nerve agents will kill you within a minute or two. So, I mean, these are all things where they're like, holy crap, we're going into this real world stuff. We're not be using these training things anymore. We have to use the real medication so that if you start to get a gas and you start to choke or find yourself having an issue, you would administer with this injectable, these kits to try to prevent you from dying from nerve agent. We got a bit of a gas mask, of course. Okay, got to get your weapons, pack your bags. This is at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. This was General Fox. So General Fox was in charge back at Fort Bragg of the medical command. And everybody, kept asking, hey sir, what's the scoop? Like, we're gonna go over there, we're gonna kick their butt. What do you think? 3 months, 4 months, we'll be back? Because the first Gulf War was over pretty quickly, right? So General Fox says, you'll be over there a year. I'm like, come on, sir. There's no way, a year. It's like, you're gonna be over there a year. Prepare for a year. And so we're like, okay, what does he know that we don't know? All right. And we were over there for a year. He was right. Okay. This is in line. This is a place called Green Ramp, which is at the Air Force Base right next to Fort Bragg. Everybody gathers, and there's a lot of waiting. And we got sent home a bunch of times because the airplanes weren't on time, the weather was bad, and we didn't know until the end where we were going to go to. All we knew we were going to get on an airplane, and we're going somewhere. We weren't sure yet. We know we're going that way. All right. When we got on the airplane, they finally told us to go to Kuwait. So we were told we're going to Turkey and coming in from the north. Like, no, the Turkish people don't want us coming through Turkey. We're going to go to Kuwait. So there were 3 flights for 3 days, 514 personnel, about 25 docs, 4 nurse practitioners, and a full complement. There was a lot of people. There were anesthesiologists, there were ICU nurses, there were respiratory therapists, people who could run CAT scanners, people who could do x-rays, respiratory therapists. I mean, we had like a little mini hospital. You'll see a picture of it later as I show you how we set it up. And these are folks, some of us had worked with before, some of we never met before. So we had to come together and actually build a team to be able to take care of casualties. So Camp Doha, oh my God, the worst place in the world almost. All right, there it is, it's the Persian Gulf, Camp Doha right there on the coast, and that's where we flew into. The first night we were there, they had one of the worst sandstorms they've had there in about a decade. We got off the airplane, we got our bags, we started heading towards our fine living facility, which was this warehouse. And you'll see we had to put a bunch of cots, women and men, didn't matter, you were all together. When we changed, we had to use either plastic bags or blankets or something to cover up to kind of pull your stuff on and change. You had no privacy, okay? Literally, you could do this and touch the person in the cot next to you. That's where we were. But the sandstorm came in, and this whole thing has been since cleared out, but the whole thing was basically filled with this fine, fine sand, which was like, it's like baby powder, like talcum powder. I mean, it wasn't like sand, like, playground sand. It was really, really, really thick and get in your eyes, get in your nose, cause you to choke. It was miserable. We weren't ready for that the first time we got there. Like this, didn't expect that. So for the medics, we had to give them classes. The reason being is when medics go to medic school, they get great training. They get told how to do IVs and how to prepare for chest tubes and all this thing. But the problem is, when they get to their first duty assignment, they usually go in a hospital. Well, they're not, in most cases, they're not seeing trauma in a hospital. They're seeing routine stuff, right? Got people with hurt arms, or they hurt their back, or they got a cold, anything else that you've seen in any other hospital. And often they'll also go to to do some maintenance work, maintenance on vehicles. So their skill set starts to decline. So we had to get them back up to speed and say, listen, you guys, some of you guys are right out of school, and some of you guys and gals haven't really touched a patient since you were in medic school 3 or 4 years ago. We need to get you all up to speed so you know how to take care of patients. Okay? We got to prepare for war. We are going to see war casualties. That's what we're expecting. Okay? These big containers were pre-positioned in the Gulf on ships. And so they brought this, as the ships moved over before all this started, these things were all packed, but they had all these supplies with no rhyme or reason to them. We had to literally unload all of these big, huge containers of medical equipment, sort through it all, check if it still was valid, if it hadn't expired. So some of the IV tubing would crumble because it had been in there for a while. Okay? We had to make sure the IV tubing was okay. And then repackage stuff all back together again so we could go on a convoy and go out to wherever we were going to go out. So there was these little big, these containers here, there were, oh God, there must have been, I don't know, 25 of them. There was a ton of them. All unpacked. Taking a little rest right there. Now looks pretty comfortable there. It's about 110, about 110 degrees. It's a dry heat, I know a dry heat thing, but it's 110 degrees. I'll show you a funny picture coming up later too. This is true, all right? In the desert one day, now you could say, well, that thing couldn't have been accurate. It was bloody hot. 157 degrees is what came out on that thermometer. And we took another one, and we got another thermometer and put it out there, 152 degrees. I mean, it was just like being on Mars. It was unbelievable. Very, very hot, very, very humid, tough to stay hydrated because the water temperature was the air temperature. We didn't have any coolers, so people were drinking this warm water, so they weren't drinking much. They were getting kidney stones because they were dehydrated. And plus we were in flak vests, all right? And they had chemical equipment close by to put on as well, so it was really tough conditions. You'll see some more pictures in a bit. All right, a little bit of downtime. This is before we actually were told where we're going. We were in Kuwait, basically waiting, like the war hadn't started yet. We're just kind of pre-positioned. We went through all the supplies, we repacked all the supplies, and now we're just sitting in Kuwait going, is this thing gonna get going? Can we go home? What's the scoop, right? When's this gonna happen? And then it began. So March 19th, I'll show you a picture here. We were in the dining facility at Camp Doha, and we were sitting there and watching this Armed Forces network. It's a closed network. They have news and sports and stuff, and we're sitting and eating. Everybody's watching the screen, like, the Scud alarm missile has sounded in, what is it, Kuwait City. And we're like, huh, Camp Doha is probably like 10 miles from Kuwait City, right? So the Scud alarm, which is the Scud missiles that sent over stuff. We're like, huh, that's a little concerning. About 2 minutes later, the Scud alarm went off at Camp Doha. And when that happened, it was crazy because people were expecting this. We didn't know if there was chemicals in these Scuds. And we had the Patriot missiles, our missiles, were intercepting them and blowing them up overhead. So we're hearing like shrapnel coming down the roof of the dining facility of the Scud missiles being blown up by the Patriot missiles. And we're going, holy crap. I went to med school, I don't think I signed up for this. And there's like real chemical weapons in this. I mean, we have to get our gas mask on and get our equipment on because it could be nerve agent or blister agent or something in these weapons. And the reality is, we don't know, and if we're not prepared, you can start doing the kicking chicken there in a few minutes and it's all over, right? So here's a picture in the dining hall. We had put on here we got some of our gear on, all right, waiting for the all clear sign. And some of the injectables that I showed you, it was funny when this was all over the first time, there was a young lieutenant girl, you could tell she was scared. When you hit yourself with that chemical, one of those chemicals that makes your eyes, it has the chemical in it, medication makes your eyes dilate. So we could see when she was walking down afterwards, her eyes were all dilated out, like that girl hit herself with that medication just in case, right? She was that scared that even though there was no chemicals, she thought there was, and she wasn't taking a chance, so she administered the kit before she was taking any chances. So she was obviously very scared. So, war starts, right? This was first strike. They sent those Scud missiles into Kuwait attacking us. So our job now was to say, okay, we have to set up a combat support hospital somewhere because the war fighters are going to take their tanks, they're going to go across the berm from Kuwait into Iraq, and there's going to be some injuries. And you have to get them out of there, and we got to set up a combat support hospital. So we ended up doing 3 convoys over a period of about 2 weeks. So we'd convoy with these trucks, just packed in like sardines, again, about 110, 115 degrees. And we would convoy for about 8 or 9 hours from one, and then we would stop, and we'd set out for 2 or 3 days, just kind of hang out, waiting for the war fighters to continue to sweep through Iraq. And then we would say, okay, they've swept this area, now we're gonna chase behind them. We're gonna go the next leg. And then we would stop for a couple days, and they would say, okay, now we're gonna set up our final destination. So this was the first leg of that, where we stopped it's in Kuwait, just outside the Iraqi border. Okay, this is our living facilities. Yep, it got hot in there. Okay, there were some fans, but not a lot of them. Those are not air conditioned. You can see we're right next to each other, all just jammed in. We were there for about 3 or 4 days before we were told, okay, now what? That's in the conditions. That's a sandstorm. All right, you can see every day there's a sandstorm, at least one. Some of the gang, some of the group. Okay, this was after a Scud alarm went off. Again, another chemical attack. There were no chemicals, but there were Scud missiles, and we didn't know if they'd have chemicals. And you couldn't take a chance, right? You could say, well, she's the first 10 didn't have any chemicals on it, so I'm blowing this one off. I'm just going to keep my gas mask off. The reality is everyone could have had. So we were exhausted because for the first 2 weeks, they were sending over those damn Scud missiles probably like every 4 hours. So you get comfortable, and then all of a sudden you go off, put the mask back on, and get some of your chemical gear back on. And then it'd be the all clear, you get the all clear whistle. Then you take your guard down, and then you go do some stuff, and all of a sudden the damn alarm would go off, all through the night. All through the night. So from here we would go in. So this was our unit, and this is one of the ones you don't want to be first string. So as a family doctor, they had 3 emergency room doctors, they had 4 family physicians, and a bunch of surgeons, and they thought they would need more ER docs because when they set up, they knew it was going to be busy. So we didn't send the entire hospital in right away. It was a first string, if you will. So I was told by the commander, she said, we're going to keep you here. You can come in on the second wave, and then that might be a week or so. I said, that's fine, whatever. And so now I'm like in my cot, sleeping, and she literally comes on and tugs on my shirt, so we need you to go in tomorrow. You're going into the first wave. And I'm like, thank you? I'm like, so I say thanks, or whatever. First string, thanks, right? Or I'll be on the bench for this one. But, excuse me. Anyways, this is sort of the send-off. We were driving through with our spa convoy, and this is the rest of our unit sort of saying, Godspeed. So here we go, going in, right? There's the border. All right, that's sort of what we saw when we first came through. Okay, kind of like a World War II movie. It was really weird because we went over the border. There's all this concertina wire set up. There's smoke, and there's kids in the streets, and all the kids are like smiling and they're waving American flags, and they all want candy. They all want us to toss candy out. But on the other hand, we have to be careful because you don't know. I mean, you want to trust these little kids, but the other thing is, well, all these little improvised explosive devices, one of these kids is going to come up with a can and just kind of grab them like, GI, we want candy, and get candy, and then they toss a bomb in the back or a grenade in the back of our truck and take out the whole truck. So we had our weapons on them as the kids, and we were tossing them candy, but we had, weapons on them just in case, God forbid, they decided to throw something in the back of the truck. All right, beautiful landscape. I mean, it's hot there. I don't know if is anybody here from Iraq or the Middle East? No. You are?
Yeah.
No kidding, from Iraq?
Egypt.
Oh, wow, fantastic. This is a tough country. I mean, Iraq and Iran have had a lot of turmoil over the years, a lot of history there. And this country's been beat up, right, by wars, Iran-Iraq war and everything else, and then, of course, Operation Iraqi Freedom and Desert Storm. They've had a lot of trouble, and Saddam was no friend of the people. Matter of fact, after the first Gulf War, they got to Baghdad, they stopped, and then they said, okay, well, the people in the South were close to Kuwait were very much for the U.S. They did not want Saddam in power, etc. But when we went in the first time and then slowly retreated out of there over years, Saddam decided to punish them. So the Euphrates and Tigris River that goes through used to feed this part of the country, which was very lush and very green. But his answer to you crossed me, I'm going to dam off the rivers. So he dammed off the rivers, and this turned into wasteland, and thousands of people died. So that was his revenge, if you will. Not a nice guy. Not a nice guy. This is our final stop. This is where we're going to set up our combat support hospital. If you think you're on Mars or on the moon, you probably are not far from the truth. That is what it looked like. This stuff is hard packed, but after a while it would sort of break up and be softer sand. But it was like being on a different planet. All right. This is a little interesting. So this was in Baghdad, and these little tunnels down there, basically they had surveillance equipment. So if you would go down that hole, and a lot of places in the green zone where Saddam had his palace, had these little rabbit holes, if you will. And if you went down into them, which is pretty creepy actually, and you got down to the bottom of them, there was surveillance equipment. And this is stuff that Saddam and the Ba'ath Party would put surveillance equipment around places that they thought of people in power who were against him. If he got any whiff, they were not in his corner. With the surveillance equipment, there was torture equipment down there. There was torture things down there. There were some pretty medieval-looking devices, stretch machines, things with spikes and things that, again, the locals said, oh yeah, we would hear people screaming as they would pull people, drag them into this hole and torture them for crossing Saddam Hussein or the Ba'ath Party. I mean, it's hard to believe, right? Hard to believe that stuff was happening 15, 16, 18 years ago. So I'll just make kind of quite a lecture, right? Everybody's like, need a donut if you want a donut. All right, minefield, all right? They set that up for us. No, we're not going to drive through there. Now, we're maybe not, Americans are not the smartest people in the world, but we're not going to drive through that. So we went around. Tanks going towards Baghdad. Some of the finer citizens, guys being arrested, these are folks that were not being friendly to coalition forces. Just some pictures here for you. All right. So, kind of going through again, more convoying. These trucks were interesting. There were bad guys on these trucks. Now they had all this white, always waving like a white flag, like don't shoot us, don't shoot us. But there are multiple stories of people, troops, convoys going through Baghdad and other parts of Iraq that would go by these trucks and figure, okay, well they got the surrender flag or the white flag out, and they were shooting at the convoys. As they went by, right as they went by, they would turn around and they would start firing on the convoys. So here we are, a medical unit and a convoy We didn't have any support. We didn't have military police. We didn't have infantry. We just had a bunch of doctors and nurses in trucks with these little 9mm guns or pistols, and we were expected to defend ourselves, which was a little concerning. And we could all fire. We all knew how to do it, but we didn't have a lot of ammunition. And technically, medical folks aren't supposed to carry weapons unless it's only for self-defense. We're not supposed to initiate. We can only defend ourselves. This is one of Saddam's air bases that got blown up in the first Gulf War. That's one of our stopping points. That's us packed in the back of a 5-ton vehicle. Very comfortable. As you can see, the helicopter taking off is showing you, again, what that sand is like. It's like talcum powder, baby powder. This is a meeting of all of us as we get ready to move out to the next fun convoy of 8 hours. But people say, well, what about going to the bathroom? Right? Well, for women, basically they put up like a poncho shelter or a space blanket, and off the back end of the truck they went. Same thing with the guys. Just the truck keeps on moving, and the guys are peeing off the back as the truck is moving. The truck's going about 30-35 miles an hour, not so much faster than that. I don't want to talk about what happens with number 2. Just leave it at that. But they had little things set up to do, but it wasn't very comfortable and it wasn't very private. But convoy was going to move. All right, final 18-hour convoy. It's our bags in the back. We call it dogwood. That's what they call it. LSA, Logistical Support Area, LSA dogwood. This was about 15 miles southwest of Baghdad. This is where we set up our hospital. There it is. They were all surveying it, kind of where we're going to put the hospital. Start digging. Start laying out the equipment. Now, what was interesting about this hospital, it was the first hospital ever used in real world that had it was chemically protected. And you'll see, we actually set up almost like a big, ginormous series of Ziploc bags. I mean, they were like the biggest Ziploc bags you've ever seen. And even the plastic, where they come together, were like this thick, and they had special tools to use to seal up. So what was gonna happen is, if we got attacked by chemical weapons, right, we had to then seal the hospital up, put a reverse airflow system, start that up, so that no air got in and no air got out, right? It was like being a big Ziploc bag. This was the first one ever used in real world, and we put it up. And you guys will see, as it goes up, again, very hot. Now, the nice thing was, we had air conditioning in here, but it never got below 80, because it's over 100 outside, but it kept a lot of the dirt and the dust out, especially out of patient carriers. So it was a pain in the butt to set up, and it was really hot. But if we ever did get attacked by a chemical attack, we were protected. And the other thing is, it kept a lot of dirt and dust out. And it's about 110, about 120 in there, just dripping in sweat. It was lovely. Putting the lights up. And that's what it looks like. So it's a series of these. You'll see when I show you a final picture, it's a series of these little units all sort of intertwined together. This was the emergency department here. And then if you go through the far end of it, it would connect to like CAT scan, X-ray, and then there'd be a couple of other wards off of that for patient care areas. Okay. There it is there when it's all set up. All right. Over to your left, that's where all the things, like the trucks are set up there, with all of the hospitals over there. And you can see it's basically on Mars. I mean, it's pretty nasty. That watering hole, that was wastewater. So we did actually, for the first 4 to 6 weeks, we might have gotten a shower once a week, if we were lucky. Once we got the makeshift showers up, we were able to go pretty much every other day we could take a shower. My shift was a 12-hour shift. I'd go in 6 o'clock in the morning, get done at 6 at night. Did that for 4 months straight. All right, so our little hospital there, which we had 44 beds, an ER, ICUs, CAT scanners, lab, pharmacy. Again, it was like a mini hospital. Mini hospital. That was a real day. That is not any sort of camera filter. That's what it was that day. There was sun above, and this was in the middle of a sandstorm. And then it started to rain and thunder. And so we were covered with this lovely dirt and dust, and then it started to rain, which it doesn't rain very often in the desert. And they were like, looked like a horror movie, because we're like, all this slime on us that was dripping off of our faces and uniforms from this particular day. It was like being in hell, really. It was crazy. Again, nurses, x-ray techs, we had neurosurgeons, okay? Because we did see some head stuff there too. It was amazing the different things that they were able to take care of in a desert environment. All right, it's a little sand. This is a dust devil. Let's see if I'll give it a whirl.
Jimmy out there.
Let's see if it's gonna run.
It was for the. Do you have it in the file?
I do. It's all in the file.
This one, right?
So this is our sleeping quarters. Now these things look rough, but they don't do a lot of damage. But this is a typical little dust devil. This is a larger one. They usually aren't that big. Like, yeah, right through our sleeping quarters. So what would happen is the tents usually, we lift the flaps up during the day because it would get too hot in there. And we had cots. What I would do, most of us would do, is we put space blankets on top of the cot. And the reason we do that is because when you leave for the day to do your shift, the sandstorms would come and they'd blow all the sand in. And literally every day I'd come back from my shift and I would have to take my cot and dump about this much sand off of my cot in a 12-hour shift. So if you got, you got the end of your shift and you didn't have that, you'd have to wipe it off all the canvas and stuff. So all you would do is take your space blanket and sort of dump it over like that, get them up. But every day, there's probably about this much sand on your cot when you came back from 12-hour shift. Crazy. All right, luxury living. All right, those were our porta potties. All right. Yep, that's what we did with them. We had to burn it. All right, they burned the honey pots, they call them. All right. Not a fun job. The officers did not have to do that. I actually felt bad for the enlisted folks because they did. A couple of us went there every once in a while to talk to them and thank them for doing the shit work, excuse me, but that's what it was, right? But you had to do it because otherwise the flies and things would come and then you bring disease and infection and everything else, right? So you had to take care of it. So underneath those little metal things, etc., that's where we had the big buckets, metal buckets, and they'd pull them out and then they'd burn them. Here's a guy, he's improvising out there in the desert, right? He's got his weapon just to be on the safe side. All right. This was our gym, and there's our bench. All right, pretty awesome, right? Just like LA Fitness, right? Here's our internet cafe. It was slower than heck, but I tell you, it was precious time because you got to get connected to home. This is our living quarters here. All right. One of the big rules: don't feed the dogs. They are wild dogs, and feral dogs. And we told all the soldiers were always told: number one, you don't drink alcohol in the theater. What we don't need, and we'll tell you a story about this, is someone being drunk and shooting someone else. Whatever. You are not to drink alcohol when you're in a combat zone. Rule number two: do not make a dog your buddy, because a lot of these dogs are rabid and have issues. And we did have one guy who got bit by a dog, and we had to go from Washington, D.C., have rabies vaccine and anti-venom sent all the way overnight, 12 hours, risking people's lives to get it there. So, because we didn't know if this dog had rabies or not, because it took off after it did that. This little guy wandered, This little guy wandered through the camp. He's about 6 feet long. 6 feet long. He doesn't look that big. He's 6 feet long. Yeah. He just kind of wandered right through the camp. This guy, camel spider. They get this big, camel spiders. They're not poisonous, but they can leave a nasty bite. All right. Scorpions. We had one guy come in the ER freaking out because a baby scorpion, when he's under a vehicle servicing the oil change, a baby scorpion crawled up on his neck and was tapping him in the neck, trying to sting him. But he didn't have enough strength in his tail, and the guy had thick neck skin, so he couldn't get through. But the guy thought he got stung, he didn't. But he was freaking out, I got stung by a scorpion. He was freaking out because he didn't get stung, he didn't get you. You know, you're not going to die if a baby scorpion. I mean, you get a little sick, but, all right? The story I was going to tell you about the alcohol. One night we were working, and 2 soldiers came in, and screaming for help. And this is when we were out of the desert. We were in the green zone. We'll get to that. And apparently they had been drinking. They got a hold of some alcohol, these 2 soldiers, and they decided to go to the Baghdad Zoo. And they had picked up some local kebabs from some vendor on the street. So at first they were taking the kebabs to the zoo, and the tigers were hungry, the tigers. And they're like, tucking the little piece of the kebabs, and the tigers are like, this is great, like Tony the Tiger, great. And he's trying to get the kebabs. And then finally, he gets a little braver, and the tiger's getting closer. Now these guys are like, drunk as can be, and decide to sort of do one of these. Well, when he did one of those, the tiger swiped and took his arm off. Hanging. He came in dripping in blood with his arm hanging by his spear, like, holy shit, what happened? Oh, buddy, we're feeding the tigers, and we gotta feed the tigers. Feed the tigers what? Kebabs, man, kebabs, you gotta save them. He lost his arm. He couldn't save his arm. He was just hanging by his skin. He was able to get a tourniquet on and stop the bleeding, right? But, and here's the bad part, right? So in the military, when you get injured, you either get injured in the line of duty, or you get injured not in the line of duty. If you get injured in the line of duty, in other words, you're doing your job, then you get compensated and you get taken care of. If you are not in the line of duty, i.e. you're being a knucklehead, the military says, not on us, man, you're bad. Feeding the tigers, you lost your arm, go take care of the out. We'll get you back home, and you get taken care of on your own dime. Line of duty, no. So that's what happens when you're a knucklehead and don't follow directions and all the regulations. Drinking in a combat zone, I mean, there are times where you'll have downtime, they'll let you have a beer when things have settled down, like you're not supposed to be drinking, because it's life from our eyesight, right? It's crazy. All right. This was our laundromat. All right. You would go, basically, you take some detergent, you put it in a bucket, and you do your clothes. What was amazing is you'd hang it up. The air was so dry and so hot, 10 minutes. It's faster than a dryer. I kid you not. You'd squeeze out your clothes, you'd hang it up, and in 10 minutes they'd be dry as a bone. Never seen it like it. It's crazy. Yeah, real dry. But it's not fun doing your clothes by hand, right? I mean, we had to do that for about 6 months before we got again to the green zone, where we had a guy that was doing it for us. MREs. I lost a lot of weight. You get sick of eating MREs, meals ready to eat, right? You can only have so much chicken tetrazzini for breakfast, right? And beef stew before you're like, I don't think I want any of that for breakfast anymore. You just stop eating it. So it gets pretty gross. The water, as I mentioned, was the air temperature was over 100 degrees, so it was tough to drink it because it was so warm. You never got cold water. Shower shoes. That's the bags from the MREs. Being creative, right? All right. So this is the stuff. All right. You guys gonna be all right? This is pretty gross stuff. All right. If you have to leave, I understand. All right. I'll try to not dwell on this. The medical people, when I give this to, that are into it, like, wow, this is amazing. But I get this might be a little gross. Okay. So this was, the Red Cross is supposed to mean don't shoot at us, right? We're medical. We're not carrying weapons. We're not bad guys. We're just taking care of people. Unfortunately, not everybody follows the Geneva Convention. And so when you don't follow the Geneva Convention, we had a couple medics in the back of this ambulance with the patient, and the bad guys shot a rocket-propelled grenade through it and killed him. Right? Basically shooting for the Red Cross.